Dzień dobry. Namaste. Ciao. Konnichiwa. Good morning, good morning, good morning. It's Ken at 10. How are you today? I hope you're well. If you've not been here before, then welcome. Where have you been? Come here every day, please. Join us for Ken at 10. We're estate agents based in southwest London, Norbury to be precise, which is SW16, a fantastic area that you should come and join us in. Zone 3, commuter land for London. If anybody ever goes back there, that is, of course. And we're between Streatham and Croydon, or Streatham and Thornton Heath, depending on how well you know the area. And we talk about all things property, general stuff, and just try and really lift your mood for the day, really, is part of it, and give you an idea of what's going on in the housing market legislation. What have I got for you today? Well, I've got a local celebrity who's written a book. Yes, we have those here as well. Apart from Stormzy, there's another one, another Norbury celebrity, and I'll be talking to you about him later on in the show. And also just a little bit of property news. And the other thing I'll update you on is lettings legislation, particularly in regard to rent arrears, because I know a lot of landlords have asked me the question of, you know, what is happening, how can I and when can I serve notice on my tenants if I have tenants in arrears. A lot of landlords across the UK are struggling big time with tenants that are in arrears, and obviously our sympathies go out to any tenants that are struggling right now with the pandemic. Most landlords are sympathetic and understanding, but also obviously they have to protect their business themselves. Some of our landlords, in fact, the majority of our landlords are not big businesses. They're individuals who rely on the rent to feed their own families quite often. And sometimes they're individuals that rely on the rent to pay very large mortgages. Sometimes they're pensioners that rely on it to pay for their own food and heating. So it's not just about the tenants, it's also about landlords. And if you're furloughed, you know, one of the conversations we had at the very beginning of the pandemic with a lot of our tenants, with all of our tenants virtually, when they said we're furloughed and we understand that there are holidays out there for landlords in terms of mortgage payments, we tried to articulate that it's not really a holiday in the sense that what they're doing is rolling up the interest. What it means is that landlords can elect not to pay their mortgage right now, but it does mean they'll have a bigger mortgage payment at the other end of the pandemic. And of course, this means that they're going to struggle then to meet costs if their rent is very close to their income, their interest payment rather. It could even exceed it and make it extremely difficult for them to continue to let. So the net result is, you know, one of the questions we always ask is, are you furloughed? And if you are furloughed and you're on 80% of your salary, but you're not commuting, you're not paying for lunches, and you can't be spending your money elsewhere, then your rent should be one of your priorities. I mean, it is your roof over your head, right? Obviously, we've all got to eat. And if you still can't afford, then you need to have a discussion with the landlords, and landlords should be patient and understanding, but communication is the key. If you've got a problem, you need to discuss it, because there is government support out there. There is help for you if you're in that position. And if you're a landlord and need to understand what you can and can't do in terms of notice, we'll come on to that at the end of the show. That being said, a couple of headlines today. House prices will take a hit when stamp duty holiday ends. Experts, inverted commas, are saying that the house price rises in southern and eastern England are likely to drop by 30,000. Love the way they put this specific figure on there, 30,000, like they'd know. The same experts that told us last year that the house market was going to be dead this year. The truth is they don't know. And the funny thing is that that's a Zoopla thing. And the Zoopla research says number of agreed sales between July, when the tax break was announced in January, was 71% higher. And yeah, we echo that. We understand that. The average stamp duty saving was 7,000 across the region. And we would say actually locally in our area that the saving is much bigger. Most of our, thanks London chef. So yes, good morning to you. And basically in terms of what we found is that a lot of people are saving as much as the full stamp duty, because we're in London and average house prices here are higher. We're looking at an average 3-bedroom house price in Norbury of around 500,000. Thereby you get a maximum saving of £15,000. It's a huge amount of money, isn't it? So what will happen, you know, at the end of the stamp duty? Well, two things. First of all, we don't know what Rishi's going to do yet, do we? You know, we know that he's got this announcement coming up in March. I was listening to the radio this morning and they were saying that it looks likely, and I think it was one of the ministers on was saying that don't expect any massive tax rises this time around. There's time for that. Interest rates are low. And I think what they're intimating is that there's going to be no hard tax rise or no large tax rises coming in the near future. I mean, no doubt at some point all of this pandemic has got to be paid for, and it will be paid for in one way or another. But the other side of the coin is that they need the economy, the stimulus in the economy to keep going. How do they do that? Well, The only thing that's been a stimulus to the economy over the lockdown has been housing. And from that point of view, they're going to want that to continue. The whole point of the stamp duty deadline was to stimulate the market. If you say, oh, don't worry, it's free from now on, then that stimulus goes away. So in my view, he's leaving it until the last minute. He'll probably continue the stamp duty holiday or completely rearrange the tax, has been discussed as well. I don't suspect that will happen because, as I've said many times, this tax is the easiest tax in the world to collect. You sell a house, the solicitor's under obligation to submit the tax to the Inland Revenue. That's it. All they do is collect it. They don't have to administrate it very much. They literally just have to bank the money, record that it's banked and what property it's from, finished. I mean, that's free money to the government, isn't it? And I can't see them wanting to lose that anytime soon. But I do think that, you've got to look at the whole economy in the wider context and say that, when house sales happen, there are so many other industries that are interconnected, the builders that you use, the white goods that you buy, the removal companies, the solicitors, the banks, the estate agents, and that's just skimming the surface. And then, of course, the gardeners, cleaners, and everybody else in between. So many reasons why they should continue the stimulus for us here in the housing market, and let's hope they do. And in terms of that and how we're doing, a lot of people are asking how the market's going and what's happening. Right now, we're still getting new instructions, not as many. People are quite cautious about letting people into their house, and that's quite understandable, which is why some of the valuations we're doing right now are Zoom valuations. Some people are saying, look, can we do the valuation and then perhaps you walk around with your PPE on, and then at the end of the valuation, we meet in the garden with social distancing and masks on. Other people are more cautious, just want a Zoom valuation. Either way is fine with us, whatever makes you feel comfortable. The most important thing right now is that you feel safe and comfortable because, things are still tough out there. Now, in terms of COVID recovery, this is the key, I think. A lot of people are saying, what's going to happen to house prices and the stamp duty and everything else. But if you look at what's happened, we were all worried about Brexit and what's going to happen there. We've got a deal. You may not like it. You may think that actually we shouldn't have done Brexit in the first place. But the truth is we've got a deal, which should be good for the economy. On top of that, we've got the vaccines. The vaccines are here. They're being rolled out. Yes, it's taking time. But we do believe that the vaccine is the key to getting released from this pandemic. And when we do get released, there's going to be a feel-good factor. When people suddenly get released, it's going to be, hopefully, in the summertime, and that should lead to a spring or summer bounce, we think, depending on where we are with that vaccine rollout, because we are, as much as we've been worse than any other country in terms of the pandemic in the sense of infection, we're rolling out the vaccines faster than most, and it looks like it's going really well. So long may it continue. Everyone's mucking in and doing their bit. I was watching the news last night, and your heart goes out to the key workers, doesn't it? Just looking at them, it's quite heartbreaking. And anyone that's lost loved ones, it's just awful right now. But by the same token, we can see a chink of light at the end of the tunnel. And, let's be optimistic and look at that. It's all we can do, isn't it? Now, there's a new regulator to be announced by the Housing Secretary, Robert Jenrick. And this is to do with Grenfell. And what they're saying is that he's going to have powers to ban the use of dangerous building materials and prosecute companies. You'd think that they've done that already, wouldn't you? After all the time that's passed, it's amazing to think that they're still giving these soundbite announcements and they haven't banned these things already. But there we are. Hopefully, that's another tightening of the noose around people that are using dangerous materials in buildings in the UK. But again, we have this huge problem with the EWS1 certificates, flats being sold, and flats seem to be the victim of this pandemic. What we're finding is houses, really strong sales, and any with outside space is doing well. But actually flats are struggling a bit where people are really first-time buyers not getting help from the government right now. We know we've got a scheme coming around, allegedly. Boris has spoken about 95% mortgages for first-time buyers. Please, please, please let it be available to the wider community, not just new builds. That's what we really need. Now, rent arrears. I promised you we'd talk about rent arrears and about our famous resident. So let's start with the rent arrears, a more serious side, and then we'll move on to our local celebrity. So the situation at the moment is that with all the notices that you serve, the notice period has been extended. So with a Section 8 Ground 8 notice, that's rent arrears, you used to be able to serve a notice, and that notice could be a 4-week notice, provided that there were 8 weeks arrears of rent at the point when you served and 8 weeks arrears of rent when it went to court. You could then proceed to the courts. And then what happened was the pandemic came along, and up until February the 21st of February this year, it's still extended that you have to give a minimum 6-month notice. Now, just a bit of clarity around this. There are still exceptions to that, and the exceptions are antisocial behaviour and rent arrears where it is more than 6 months arrears. So in other words, if your tenant is in 6 months or more arrears, then actually you can still use the shortened period for the notice. Of course, this won't solve your problem, because then you've got to try and hit the courts. The courts aren't doing anything anyway yet, and even when they do, there'll be large backlogs. So the result of that is obviously many landlords are in very frustrating positions. I have to say, though, tenants have been really resilient and good generally. And as I've said many times, we're very fortunate that we've got such a good bunch of tenants. And that's not by default, it's by design. We select very carefully. The selection process here is quite rigorous. And so we've got a bunch of people that are doing their best in very difficult circumstances. No doubt there'll be more redundancies to come at the end of this whole thing. But right now we're surprised at the resilience. And, you know, when you look at other markets, the resilience of the UK housing market in terms of rentals, both income and yields, has been really quite surprising. And the demand for rented accommodation right now is strong as well. And I suspect that will continue, along with many landlords taking the opportunity to go the other way and get out of the market with increased regulation that we got recently. And the government's looking to abolish the Section 21 notices, which are still valid, by the way. But again, for a Section 21 no fault eviction notice, you do need to give the 6 months notice instead of the previous 2 months. Be careful with those dates as well. Take advice from a solicitor, because if you get those dates wrong, you can spend, you know, well, right now you could spend maybe even up to 8 to 12 months getting to court, and then to find that you've got that notice wrong, it gets kicked out, you have to start again. Can you imagine? That'd be so frustrating. So be very, very careful with your notices. Get professional advice would be my advice, because to take a chance could be the most expensive mistake you ever make. Now, onto our local celebrity. Someone's wrote a book, and he was one of our clients, actually, Kevin Day. Some of you may know him. He's a local hero around here, a comedian, and he's written a book, and the book is called Who Are Ya? 92 Football Clubs and Why You Shouldn't Support Them. And it's published by Bloomsbury. He's a great guy. I hope we can get him on the show to do an isolation inspiration, because he's a really nice guy. He's very funny. And the idea for the book came from his 8-year-old son. This is from inside Croydon. I got this little snippet here. And one day he returned home from a match in a typically grumpy mood after another Palace defeat. And his son said, "Dad, can I support Blackburn Rovers? I couldn't find any other club that you don't hate." They said he told his son quite reasonably, "When you're old enough and you have your own house, you can support who you want. But in the meantime, get into your Palace pajamas. Get under your Palace duvet and say goodnight to Selhurst the cat." Love that. So Kevin Day, local legend. Get the book, published by Bloomsbury. He's a great guy. Local Norbury legend. Of course, we have Stormzy, and we claim Kevin Day now as our local. Many of the local lovely people right here in Norbury. So I hope you're having a good day today here. As far as the weather's concerned, it's looking a little bit overcast, a little bit chilly, but not too bad, really. I always think we're quite lucky in London, you know. We don't seem to get the extremes of weather. You know, the whole of the UK is flooding right now. And here we are, and we've got a little bit of drizzle. You know? So I think we're quite lucky, really. Some of you commented on our recommendation of some things we're watching on the telly at the moment, particularly The Bay. And, you know, we really enjoyed that. We're just about to start the second series of that. Well worth looking at. And Ackley Bridge, another one if you're an EastEnders fan, not EastEnders, the old 2 former EastEnders actors. Really. That's probably why I was thinking of it, actually. But it's a great school series, and quite shocking and revealing, and it deals with all sorts of social issues, drugs, gender identity, race, and it's really well written, actually. So Ackley Bridge, well worth a look, especially if you're a Grange Hill fan. You used to like that when you were younger. I think you might find it good, but it can be shocking as well. So you might want to tuck the kids up in bed if they're small. What are you watching? Tell us. Let us know what you're watching, because in the end, we're all in this pandemic. We're all locked up. You know, we need stuff to do, don't we? And Netflix and ITV and all the rest of them are a way out, aren't they? So if you're seeing something that's good on the TV that's making you escape from the pandemic, then let us all know. Put your comments in, and we'll give it a shout out so people have some other ideas as well. Tell us what you like, why you like it, and why people should be watching it. So hope you have a great day today. We'll be back tomorrow with another Ken at 10. Until then, have a fantastic day. Stay safe.